Hello! Today's stories come from r/ProRevenge. We've got two stories today. First up, he infringes my art, I shut down his print shop, and ruined his career. A little backstory. I'm an online artist, and this took place when I was in my early 20s. There was a popular artist who calls himself a professional and works in the industries. I used to look up to him. Let's call him Zach. Lately, I noticed how Zach's art looked eerily too familiar to a piece of media I've seen before. So I looked up the images and found it too matched up to his art. He was directly referencing official art and profiting off of it by selling it on his print shops online. He didn't make any effort to make the reference détachés from the original piece. I confronted him about it, sending a detailed message that he should not do that and what the possible consequences were. I have seen artists in real life who were sued for over $100,000 and to the extent in jail for doing what they did. Instead of being professional and mature about it, he lashed out at me and took it to social media, telling me how wrong I was to falsely accuse him, since artists use references, and how I could get sued for libel. I was dumbfounded at how clueless he was, not comprehending what I was talking about. He included my username, which my blog had links to my contacts, my emails, Facebook page, art accounts, and Instagram. His fans, including his group of friends, joined in sending me downright horrific messages to me. I had panic attacks resulting from the pure backlash of his enormous fan base. I constantly received hate mail telling me how horrible I am as a person, how crappy my art was, and to the extent of death threats for almost an entire month. The last straw that broke the camel's back was when he directly referenced off of my art and made money off of it. I didn't know how to find a lawyer, and I feel hopeless and angry that I couldn't do anything about it. Later, it hit me, if I can't do it, then maybe another artist can, or anyone who holds the copyright. The last time I remember, Zach never credited any of these artists for his references. I looked into the art he referenced and examined each official company matching Zach's art. I used Google search to find anyone working for said company, and voila! I found a staff member for a branch in a different continent. Let's call him Cody. I contacted Cody's Facebook and tipped him about Zach's activity through Messenger. I uploaded and sent a copy of their art and Zach's art for comparison. Cody just simply replied, "We'll contact our legal team, thanks for the notice." Another week passes by, and during the time he constantly posts to every darn thing I post about in my art blog. And then, silence. I checked, and his print shop was removed. His response to my message was taken down from his social media. He stops talking to his friends publicly. Days later, a fan was asking about him, and he responded how he is no longer friends with them because they are very toxic hypocrites. One of his former group of friends contacted my friend and cried about how awful a bully he was. Of course, my friend didn't care. It was the most glorifying feeling I have ever rejoiced. This would have been avoided if he at least heeded my warnings. How he handled the situation was not professional at all. About 5 years later, I had been informed that apparently he had a tough time getting back into the industry after there were allegations of his past copyright infringement. The biggest one was having a lawsuit with the big company Cody worked for. I don't have much to add here, as this first comment sums it up correctly. Oh, so you warned me about a danger to my career? This means you're in possession of information that could be a threat to me. Who do you think you are? I'm gonna bully you. And to think, all he had to do was either take down those specific ones or at least throw a bone to the original author, and everything would have been fine. What an idiot. These art thieves are ridiculous. I found another super fun short story where another commenter backs up a friend with even more devious tactics. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I did something similar for a friend. She was disabled, and her only source of income was the quilting patterns she sold. She was in the US. Someone in Australia ripped off several of her fantasy patterns and was selling them on their own site. Friend consulted a lawyer who said any lawsuit would have to be pursued in the Australian courts. Obviously, round-trip airfare to Australia, plus a lawyer, plus food and lodging for Bob only knows how long, would cost her far more than she could ever hope to recover. I was poking around on the thief's site and found some other interesting stuff. Oh, look, dwarves to go with Friend's unicorn and fairies. Isn't it amazing how much they look like the Disney dwarves from Snow White? Only the directions said to make them green for some reason. Maybe Thief believed that urban legend about change it 10% and it's yours. Disney has deep pockets and vigorously pursues violation of its copyrights. They made our local library paint over murals in the children's room because they looked vaguely like some Disney characters. So I called their attention to the Thief's site, told them the story of my friend, and turned them loose. 2 weeks later, I checked and the Thief's website was gone. And now, on to the main event. I love you, bud, but I'm cutting your throat. I'm a millwright who specializes in rebuilding natural gas turbines. I run with a very top caliber crew where everyone has a role to fill. My role is overseeing anything that's lifted with a crane. My technical title is rigger. If a load falls, it's my fault. If someone gets hurt while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. If equipment is damaged while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. The incident in question happened about 2 years ago, but we'll need to go back a couple years farther to get the backstory. I was a fresh member of the crew and had demonstrated competency in rigging, so after roughly 6 months with this group, my superintendent put me in charge of all rigging. I wasn't the fastest rigger, but I was safety-focused and insisted on doing it right every time, even if it took a little longer. This meant that my superintendent didn't have to watch over every rigging task and could go relax, because I had it under control. Another millwright joined the crew about the same time I did. We'll call him Larry. We didn't get along at first, but after a few months we became friends. Larry was the act now, think later type, much like the superintendent I travel under. Larry was prone to making mistakes because of that attitude, but he was very fast and worked like a mule at all times, and I respected that. He wasn't especially skilled in any one area, so he had no special position. That meant sometimes he'd get put on less glamorous work, and I soon learned he was very jealous of my position as the rigger. At times, he would make comments like, "I'm going to take your job." Not in getting me fired, but bumping me down a rung and him taking my spot as rigger. He'd come up behind me while I was looking over my checklist to point out something I may not have checked yet. Supervision was near, he'd make sure he was heard. At this point, I should mention this. I stick out like a sore thumb on this crew. I was raised in a very strict religious cult, but in my mid-20s, I realized what was going on and left at great cost, losing my family and friends because of strict shunning rules the cult practices. Some of the stricter things stuck with me, like I've never been intoxicated. I don't use tobacco, no recreational drugs. I speak professionally without slang or colloquialisms for the most part. These traits stick out from a crew of men that travel the road and work in harsh environments away from home for months on end. But Larry, he fits right in. Larry quickly became the superintendent's puppy, bringing him gifts of his favorite alcohol, staying out late after work with him, even rooming with him on the road. I, on the other hand, leave work, hit the gym, cook my food for the next day, and make sure I get at least 6 hours of sleep so I can perform the next day. I realize that puts me at a disadvantage socially in the workplace, but I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Anyway, fast forward about 18 months. We're starting a project just before vid hits. About 2 weeks into the job, I have to attend a mandatory class through my union. It's a 40-hour class and in a different state, so I'll be gone for pretty much an entire week with travel time. I get permission from supervision and leave, with Larry rigging in my absence. A few days later, I'm laying in bed stressing about the final test I have to take the next morning. If the test isn't passed, the entire week is wasted. I always psych myself out before a test, but in reality, I don't have anything to worry about as I'm a good student and test well. My phone goes off. It's a text from Larry. "I love you, bud, but I'm cutting your throat." I reply, "What are you talking about?" "When you get back, I'll be the rigger. You can do the dirty work from now on." I'm not proud of the response I came back with, but it's how I truly felt in the moment. Be careful about cutting the throat of someone smarter than you. I'm far from the smartest person you'll ever meet, but I do enjoy reading, studying, and learning. And being smarter than Larry wasn't an accomplishment by any stretch of the imagination. The next morning, I passed the test and headed back to the job, where Larry had in fact usurped my position as rigger and was lording it over me as I went about doing the tasks he would normally do. To be completely honest, it was kind of like a vacation at first. Get paid nearly $40 an hour to clean parts or torque flanges with no stress? Sign me up. But I was upset. I was upset because I knew I did my job better than he would. I knew that he got along better with the superintendent because of their similar personalities. But I didn't feel that I should lose my position simply because Larry had more in common with our superintendent than I did. Regardless of that, I was now dealt these cards and I had to play them. Just 3 days after I got back from class, though, the job was shut down. Vid was just now sweeping the country. Out of an abundance of caution, the plant shut the project down until further notice. We were sent home for about 3 days and then called out to an emergency shutdown where a turbine had crashed. We roll out and are on the job 48 hours later in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. We get right to work. On this particular unit, you pull the entire roof off in 2 sections with a crane to open the enclosure. Compared to many things we lift in a project like this, the roof weighs very little. The turbine rotor may weigh over 100,000 pounds, but the roof usually weighs around 7,000 pounds. Lightweight, but it is large, and there are critical parts around the roof that can be damaged if not lifted carefully. Typical procedure is to be on top of the roof after it's unbolted, be in a full-body harness and tied off to an approved anchor point capable of holding at least 5,000 pounds per OSHA regulations. We then slowly take the weight off the roof with the crane until it's floating, and then climb down off of it and continue the lift until it's set on the ground or on a truck to be moved. The superintendent instructs me to go on the roof with Larry and assist him. Do whatever Larry tells you to do. Okay, boss. I put on my harness and climb to the top and begin to assess the situation. The rigging to lift the roof is 4 or 5 ton chainfulls. It's capable of safely holding 20 tons. Well over the weight of the roof. The crane is also well overrated for this lift, even with the boom extended all the way out in order to clear another building on the way to the ground. Larry has it all rigged up, but no tension on the wire rope slings. And then I notice his crucial mistake. He has forgot to account for boom deflection. When a crane takes the weight of a load, the boom flexes down. Depending on the crane setup and the weight of the load, it can mean that while your crane hook might be centered in your load with no weight on the hook, once you get the weight of the load on the crane hook could be anywhere from a few inches to a number of feet off center, which means that when the load comes off the ground, it swings. Swinging is bad, always. Enough weight swinging could tip the crane, crash into equipment, crash into a person. It's very dangerous. At this point, I start calculating. Is this weight enough, even swinging, to tip this crane? No, not even close. Is it enough to break a chainfall? No, not even close. Are there any people working around us that could get hurt? Nope. It's just us. Is there any equipment that could be damaged if it swings? Yes. An electrical control panel, which has all power killed to it and has been disconnected, is in the swing path. I decide to let Larry hang himself. He looks at me and asks what I think. I tell him, "This is your show, boss." He asks what I mean. I look him in the eye and draw my finger across my throat. He gets nervous because he knows exactly what I mean. Starts double-checking everything. He still doesn't notice the boom deflection. After a couple minutes, he decides I must be talking out of my butt and proceeds with the lift. I stop him and remind him to tie off with his harness. He doesn't realize it, but we're about to go for a ride. Generally, when I'm rigging, I first find out what the thing I'm rigging to weighs. It's a vital piece of information. If I know what it weighs, I can have the crane operator track how much weight he has on the crane, and I'll be able to know when the object should start to pick up. If we get to over 10% more than the object should weigh, there may be something stopping it from moving, and we need to stop and reassess the situation. Rigging could fail. The object you're lifting could jump into the sky. All kinds of mayhem may ensue if a hidden bolt holding something together breaks because you use too much force to lift it. I ask Larry if he knows how much the roof weighs. He doesn't. I do, but don't tell him. He starts signaling the crane to slowly hoist up. The operator complies and starts lifting. I'm watching the boom get pulled more and more off-center. We're probably 2 feet from the center of the load at this point, meaning a swing that could travel nearly 4 feet. I stop Larry and ask him to see how much weight is on the crane. 11,000 pounds, 4,000 more than what it should weigh. This roof is in a bind because we're not picking it up straight, but at an angle. It's either not going to move or we're about to fly. I brace myself. Hoist up slowly, Larry calls over the radio. Boom! The whole roof shoots a good 2 feet into the air and swings wildly towards the control panel. Larry and I are riding it like pirates in the crow's nest in a hurricane. We crash into the control panel, bending it over at a 45-degree angle, destroying most of its components. People start pouring out of the nearby trailers to see what the commotion is all about. The crane operator is yelling over the radio, asking what the hell just happened. I'm smiling. Larry is shaking. He sees me smiling and knows that I knew. We get the roof set on the ground and are met by our superintendent. He's chewing Larry's backside hard. He gets to me and asks why I let it happen. I just say, I just did what Larry told me to do. The superintendent is no dummy. He's seen a thing or two and knows exactly what went down. Larry is demoted and I'm reinstalled as rigger immediately. And a few shifts later, it's all smoothed over. Larry and I are actually good friends now. We've been through a lot together and have each other's backs these days. He's now the foreman on our crew and lets me do my thing. Failing your way to the top is still a valid way of progressing in my field. But I'm happy for him. He's actually good at it. And I guess that's all there is to say about that. Wow. I absolutely love this revenge. It's a bit risky, but it sounds like he had it well in hand. Nobody suffered except the company, and that was their own fault for letting favoritism matter more than merit and competency. The sheer will to just send it, as that pressure on the line was building and the roof was about to pop off. Whew. Let's read a few of the best comments before wrapping up. Sorry to ask, but meeting people in this field is kinda rare. Turbine or turbine? OP. I literally say it both ways, depending on the type of people I'm talking to. Turbine is more professional and correct. Turbine rolls off the tongue much easier. Good on you. I don't know if I could be friends with someone who did that to me, though I would still be cautious around them forever after that if I could. Funny thing is, Larry was straight up and gave notice of his intentions. He's not a snake, so to me, that shows some personal accountability, and that there's a core to him that can be trusted. You might even say that OP rigged Larry's demotion. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.